listening to MMA Think Tank with Jay and Mike.
Welcome to the MMA Think Tank. I'm your host, Jay. And of course, along with me is my co-host, Mike. Mike, I know we're a week late, and that's because I got sick. And so blame it on me, folks. It was my fault. How have you been, Mike?
I've been pretty good. I'd rather blame it on the rain. But, we'll blame it on you for being sick, I guess. But you know what? We're both well here. We're both doing the show. We're both talking about some MMA that has happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
That's right. And we just wrapped up watching WSOF 27. If you want to talk a little bit about that, Mike, and these fights, go ahead.
Yeah, we're not going to take too long on this because it is a WSOF card. There were no titles up at stake. But, we had a lightweight Bryce Thug Nasty Mitchell, which I thought was a pretty funny name for this guy, if you know what the guy looks like. Looks kind of a country-looking white guy. But his nickname is Thug Nasty. He's now 5-0. He just beat George Medina in 1 minute. He's 5-0 now. All 5 wins are by subs. This guy looks like it could be kind of a prospect. He's in the WSOF. He's in a top-tier organization. Let's see if he can win a couple more fights, move on maybe to Bellator or the UFC. Also, we had a light heavyweight Shamil Gamzatov. He KO'd former title contender Teddy Holder, and he was in his WSOF debut. Did it in round 1. The guy is now 10-0, all finishes. David Branch is the champ at 205 and 185. So Gamzatov is certainly a guy that can put up a fight against David Branch. David Branch really well rounded, and look, the guy's got 2 belts simultaneously right now. So, Jay, before I move on to the main event, you want to talk about any of those right there?
No, except for maybe that Thug Nasty needs to change his nickname because I see nothing thug or nasty about the dude.
Yeah, I agree. I guess it's kind of one of those wink, wink, nod, nod kind of funny things. But I think as he moves up and gets better, he should probably drop that for sure.
I will say, though, that I take that back. His choke was nasty. So
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, it was, and 5 wins, all subs. So he's 5-0, and like I said earlier, Gamzatov 10-0. He might be fighting soon for the belt WSOF. In the main event, it was kind of a bummer of a fight. However, lightweight Luis Firmino, he did fight on short notice after he stepped in for Mike Ritchie. And he beat Carlos Fodor 29-28 across the board. And, you look at it, he was already ranked number 2 in their division. Is he going to fight Justin Gaethje, the champ? Gaethje does fight Brian Foster pretty soon. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. That's in the books right now. But my guess is he will probably be fighting the winner. Yeah. And that's what I have for WSOF 27.
And thank you for that. And Luis Firmino, you texted me during that fight, and you said, "Hey, this guy looks a little bit like RDA," and I have to agree. He looks like RDA about 5 years ago. I
see what you did there, Jay.
Yeah, you know what I did there. Anyway, RDA is just very different today. I'll just leave it at that. Let's go ahead and get into what we saw last week and what we were going to cover before I got sick, and that was, of course, Fight Night 81, Dillashaw versus Cruz, Mike. And you know what? Before we get started into these fights, I just want to say that I personally enjoyed the prelims more than I did the main card. That's just me. And I'll get into a little bit of that later. But Mike, let's talk about Dillashaw Cruz. How did you view this fight? I mean, did you see anything that really stood out to you in this fight?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, to quote Simon Cowell, if I was being honest, I would say that by round 4, I sat back and was no longer excited for this fight. Now, I don't want you guys out there to think that I didn't think the fight was great on either end for both these guys, but it just seemed like, okay, this is how Dominic Cruz wins. He's going to win this fight again. The first round, we won't break it down right now, I guess, but the first round was exciting. I was very excited, but then as it moved on, it just seemed to be kind of a Dominic Cruz type fight.
And that's what I was trying to get at as well. I know we talked a little bit about this off the air last week. a lot of us were pulling for Dominic Cruz in this fight, only because of the situation surrounding Dillashaw, with the way he's been acting, his coach, Dwayne Bang Ludwig, and the stuff that has been thrown around, coming from his camp anyway. So a lot of us were pulling for Cruz, but at the same time, we weren't really looking at what the potential of a Dominic Cruz champion would be like. Because we've seen this before, and you could say what you want about his fighting style and how great he is to not get hit and how he can, stick and move, so to speak. But to me, he makes for a boring champion. He really does. He wins fights like this. He rarely ever wins fights like he won against Mizugaki. He rarely ever finishes people. And to have a champ like that, after having a champ like Dillashaw, who's been knocking people out, it's kind of sad.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I do want to interject also the fact that what this guy's done in basically 3 years to come back with all the ring rust. Now, he says there's no ring rust, and I guess I'll leave it up to the fighters to if they believe in it or not. Brian Stann certainly said on the broadcast that he believes in it. He's felt it. But he defeated the best guy in the division.
Yep.
Basically after 4 years, and that's just simply amazing. The guy's an amazing fighter. He's boring though, Jay. We both agree it's boring, but he gets the job done. To put it in football terms, with the playoffs coming on tomorrow, he moves the chains, but he's not scoring a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah,
it's just, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree with everything you said there, but the problem is, it just, to have to watch him fight as the champ and not being able to get touched, not being able to get beat. It's very reminiscent of Floyd Mayweather. And if you know me, I don't like Floyd Mayweather. I used to love boxing, but I can't stand Floyd Mayweather. I don't like the way he fights. And to me, he's like the MMA version of Floyd Mayweather. And I'm not excited to see this guy as champ. But, he came back, like you said, 3 years. I don't think he had much ring rust, or at least it didn't appear to be any ring rust. Mm-hmm. He looked the same as he's done in every other fight. He's just good at movement. So,
Yeah, he is, and I don't see anybody beating him. And that's why, I was talking to my friend Bert about the fights and stuff, texting him a little bit. And I basically said that this, he liked watching Cruz. Bert's more of a boxing
guy.
Can
I ask you something
into MMA now, but to me that type of fighting is boring. And I told him, I said, look, if there's a card where Cruz is at the top and the rest of the cards not very good, that's one that back in the day I would probably drop. I probably wouldn't spend the money on, because they're doing the podcast. I buy all the UFC cards. But hey, Cruz is back. It's a good inspirational story. I'm glad to see him back for him personally and for what he means to the game. But I really hope he starts finishing guys.
Yeah, I do too. And I thought we were going to start seeing that when he finished Mizugaki. And nope, he's same old Cruz. Which isn't a bad thing. Like you said, he gets the chains moving, so to speak. He wins the fights, but again, it's sort of like how GSP ended his career in the same fashion. He just won the fight based on point. Just just getting the points. That's it.
Jay, do you think it should be a rematch, or do you think they go ahead and give him Faber to finish that rubber match? Faber's won 3 in a row at bantamweight. We're still kind of owed to that fight. From their coaching on Tough, and again, there's the rubber match. What do you think? A Sun Tzu's in the mix.
Here's the problem with the rematch thing. And usually I'll say if somebody's been holding the belt, give them a rematch if they lose. But the thing I see here is Dillashaw. Cruz never lost his belt. Okay,
right.
Not in the fight anyway. He got his belt stripped for being inactive. So him coming back and taking the belt as he did, I think that, a rematch shouldn't be guaranteed to Dillashaw. If you want, go ahead and have that fight with Faber. Whatever happens, and then go from there. But Dillashaw, maybe he fights one fight and comes back for the belt. I'd say that.
Yeah, I certainly can see that. I think they go favor Cruz, and not to get too far down the line. We'll make picks obviously later on if it comes to fruition. But
How
I
about
think
Dillashaw
he
versus
beat.
Sunsao?
Well, that's what I was going to get to. So I was going to say that Cruz should fight Faber, Dillashaw fights Sunsao, and even though Sunsao has that win over Dillashaw, it was a decision win that went his way that a lot of people thought he
Mm-hmm.
didn't win. So this would allow Sunsao to make the statement that no, look, I beat him the second time, I deserve the crown. And as Sunsao, he even said, I'm fine I'm fine with Faber getting the shot because he's still trying to mend up a bit and he doesn't want to push things too hard. So
Yeah.
that's what I would go with.
Now, I mean, it wasn't a robbery by any means. The fight could have went either way for Dillashaw or Cruz, but the way I scored it personally, I had actually Dillashaw winning the fight, basically 3-2. I thought that he outscored Cruz, but the judges saw it another way, and I think it all came to round one. Personally, I think that was the closest round. But I had 2 and 3 going to Cruz for sure. The other rounds I had going to Dillashaw. But like I said, you could sort of, take a couple of those rounds and it could have went either way. So, I don't believe in the scorecards though. The 4-1 scores for Dillashaw were just insane, and Cruz. It was just insane.
Yeah, I had it rounds 2 and 3 as well for Cruz. Round 5 for Dillashaw. Round 1 it was really close, so I ended up giving it to Dillashaw. Round 4, like I said earlier in this broadcast, I kind of sat back halfway through and just kind of semi-tuned out. So I didn't really finish that round. But from what I can tell, Jay, with you and with other friends, that and even with Dillashaw himself, and Cruz saying that they thought he won the fourth. So, but yeah, we'll see what happens, man. It certainly opens the door now to seeing with Cruz back, love him or hate him. We've got a respectable fighter who's a champ that is going to continue to not just fight but probably win. And these guys coming up, maybe the Aljamain Sterlings, if he can get signed, maybe he puts some athleticism in there, some quickness, some mission prowess on him, possibly in a few years. Who knows?
Yeah. Like I said, there's so much going for both these guys, and the fights can go either way. You can either give them a rematch or go ahead and let him Dillashaw fight a Sunsao and so forth. But let's move on, Mike. Let's talk about the other fight, Pettis versus Alvarez. This fight was very interesting to me going in, and you've been a big Alvarez fan for a while. Why don't you talk about this fight?
Yeah, if there's one fight I want to talk about so much on this fight card, or maybe even just on tonight, with all the fights that have been released, or and fights that have happened, is this one, because Alvarez did exactly what he should have done, in my opinion, is just push up against Pettis, try and take him down. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be ugly. It's not going to be, the fans aren't going to be happy, but he did what he should do to win the fight.
Exactly.
And Eddie Alvarez made no bones about it. He goes, yeah, I did exactly that, even though, and good for him, because now, look, even though I'm a fan of Eddie Alvarez, what happened? He comes into the UFC, finally gets into the big leagues. He loses to Cowboy Cerrone. Then, and by the way, he was supposed to fight Benson Henderson. Then he ends up getting Cowboy Cerrone. Then he ends up fighting Gilbert Melendez in a tough fight. Again, no slouch there. And now he fights and beats Anthony Pettis. So Alvarez, even though he hasn't looked that great in the UFC, he's 2-1 in the UFC, and he's certainly not a washout.
Definitely not. Mike, here's the thing, though. We can talk about Alvarez and where he goes from here. But what I'd like to touch on first is what happens to Pettis right now? Because in my opinion, now Pettis was exposed years ago by Clay Guida. And then again by RDA. And Pettis, it seems like the way to beat him is to just smother him. Smother Pettis. Don't let him get off on those kicks or punches, and you've won the fight. And that's what's happening to him now. And he went to a camp with a great wrestling coach, and he still couldn't beat Eddie Alvarez. So where do you think Pettis goes from here? I mean, he's got a lot of work to do.
Well, let me just add on to that really quick. Even when he beat Gilbert Melendez, people thought that
Oh, it was a
okay,
tough
well
fight.
you can't push him up against the fence now because he subbed Gilbert. Well, that was like in the fourth or fifth round. That was in championship rounds. Alvarez did this by knowing there was 3 rounds. So we don't know for sure if Pettis can do this every time in the championship rounds. Now to get back to your question, where does he go from here? I'd love to see him fight Diaz. I know we've talked about Diaz in other fights. There's kind of a rumor floating around about that. But he's lost 2 in a row, and he's a far cry from the guy that subbed Benson Henderson within a minute to win the UFC lightweight title. He's far from being the guy that was on the Wheaties box, and he's saying that now you give me a quick fight. I want to get back in there. I certainly don't think that he is, better than, not as good as he used to be or anything like that. I think that people have caught up to him. And if he took this fight super seriously as he said he was, because he says he didn't take his previous fight seriously, this is bad news for him at the top level.
Yeah, I think that the fight against RDA was a big confidence crusher, and I think this fight added to that crushing. It doesn't look like Pettis is going to be. He's not going to return to form, so to speak. He's not going to be that champ on the Wheaties box anymore. People are going to start doing exactly what Eddie Alvarez did to him. It's going to be the new game plan whenever somebody fights Pettis, unless, like you mentioned, Nate Diaz. The Diaz brothers never follow what other people are doing against, people, regardless of exposure or whatever. That they will go in there and they will fight that toe to toe. They will throw leather. So in that case, that might be a pretty good fight. But if anybody's got any kind of wrestling background, they're going to use it against Anthony Pettis.
And what Pettis needs to learn to do is to throw the knees, to time the knees when the wrestlers come in, when people come in for a shot. Once you can get that down, you have a lot better chance of getting away, of not just landing, but getting away and getting submissions and stuff like that. So it's very interesting now to see where Pettis goes. Because look, I don't think anybody picked Eddie Alvarez to win this fight.
I didn't.
I certainly didn't, and I love Eddie Alvarez. I like him as a person. I like him as a fighter. I like him just all in who this guy is. But when you look at it's not MMA math, but I will say that it was the level of competition. You look at the level of competition that Pettis had fought compared at the level of competition that Alvarez had fought. Pettis stood leaps and bounds above him. Pettis defeating Henderson, defeating Cowboy Cerrone. I mean, like defeating all these other guys. Compared to Alvarez, it's going to be interesting from now on.
It's that old saying, styles make fights, and that's exactly what went down on this fight. So Eddie Alvarez. Now we can move on to Eddie. Eddie goes where from here? What do you think happens to Eddie now?
Well, with Eddie Alvarez, the wild card in all this is Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Yes.
He wants to fight again. He's still hurt. So we've got, and I actually just wrote a little bit about this on the Facebook site. It was for, I forget what the actual topic was about, but basically it was, we have Rafael Dos Anjos, we have RDA fighting Conor McGregor. It was about Tony Ferguson, and he has a fight coming up. Sorry. But Conor McGregor is fighting RDA for the lightweight championship. So you've got those guys fighting. And now you've got Alvarez, who just beat Pettis. And Pettis is no longer like one of those guys who's going to fight for the belt recently, right? Yeah. So you got now Alvarez now, who's 2-1, just had a big fight over Pettis. Is he going to fight Khabib? Or are they going to give him... they're going to have him wait and then fight after Khabib fights the winner of Conor and RDA. I don't know, but I'd like to see Eddie Alvarez be busy, and by busy I mean like give him somebody to fight, because I think now he's on kind of a roll. And if he doesn't fight, if he waits for a title shot, I think it'd be a detriment to him.
Yeah, I agree. And Khabib, I'd say if he's ready by the time Alvarez is ready to fight again, I think that's the smart choice. I think that's the right fight to go with, because we haven't seen Khabib in a while, and he was knocking on the door when he left us. So I think that's the right move. But that's all up to Khabib. And as we've seen for the past, who knows, 2 years, we haven't seen Khabib. So he's been injury riddled. He's had so many injuries. I don't know what's going to happen with that guy.
Well, it's going to be weird to give him a fight on the title right on coming back after 2 years. They kind of did it obviously with Cruz, but he never lost his belt. But, he has the win over Dos Anjos. It was a while ago, of course, but different Dos Anjos nowadays. But, I would like to see Alvarez versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. But as an Alvarez fan, I would, I kind of don't want to see it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think that's the right fight to go with, and to see who really deserves that shot at the belt.
Yep.
All right, Mike, moving on. We had Travis Brown versus Matt Mitrione. So Mitrione, of course, was eye poked or eye gouged a couple of times during this fight, and it really put a damper on the fight for me. I just... It upset me to the point where even during the fight, I kind of just stopped really. I was watching it, but I just stopped really focusing attention on it because it really like upset me after the second eye gouge.
Yeah, and it brings up, how, when and how do we take a point away? It's all up to the ref. There's no, if you do it twice, then you get a point, or if you do it twice in the same round or twice overall, it's, I agree with you. It kind of took me out of the fight, and a lot of the heavyweights aren't as exciting right now anyway. So that you had that problem as well. But Mitrione, he still came to try and fight. Brown got the win, got the KO, the TKO. But for me, really, Jay, what I saw was this is kind of a Mitrione type fight. I'm too bad for the eye pokes, but kind of the way the fight looked without the eye pokes was kind of what I thought was going to happen. Mitrione, I hate to beat a guy while he's down, but I just don't see why he's still in the top. Why he's still fighting the top guys. I think he has been riding the I used to be in the NFL. Machine. Maybe that's not his fault. Maybe that's the UFC's fault for doing that. But
yeah, it's not just the NFL machine. What it is, Mike, and I'll say it again. It's the division. The division is why he's still fighting these top guys. It's because there's not too many guys in there. Of substance of any anybody that can actually gravitate to and say, oh, I remember that guy, or I know this guy. Most people don't know most of these, heavyweights unless they're older guys or guys that aren't very good. And I'm not saying Mitrione's not very good because I don't want him to come up and stomp me sometime. But, I've
met him. He's a big guy. He's bigger than you think. It's crazy.
I'm sure he is. But these guys, I mean, I'm sorry. I just don't care for the heavyweight division. I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with the heavyweight division. It's not very good. I guess that's kind of redundant, or it's kind of stupid. What I mean to say is that I'm fine with watching them. I'm hoping they get better. And there's some good fights we'll talk about later on that just got signed that I'm actually really interested in.
Yeah, they need new blood. Part
of the reason I'm interested in it, though, Jay, is because I have kind of a heart and soul for one of the fighters. Like you said, older guys,
They need new blood. That's what the division needs. It needs a lot of new blood. And it seems like either people are getting smaller. Gee, I wonder why. Could it be because of last July, Mike?
I think it's a good chance. Good chance.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, that who knows? The heavyweight division might not grow as fast as we want or need it to, and it might just be stagnant for quite some time, unless we get a couple of guys that are just really good in there. And I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Well, let's not forget, I don't think it will happen at this stage in the game, but let's not forget the UFC got rid of their lightweight division after BJ Penn left back in the early 2000s. They were without a lightweight division, and they brought it back, and BJ Penn came back and took it over. So I'm not saying that they're going to get rid of it, but they may just kind of just rest on Kane, rest on Verdum, and just continue to feed them guys that aren't very good compared to them, but that's all they have.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how good those guys look, or how bad they might look after July. Who knows how these guys might look? Because so far in this heavyweight division, we haven't really seen any stellar fights.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of one offhand, and I'm
I don't
all the
think we've.
ones that come up are just kind of stinkers that
Yes.
keep in my mind. I guess the best one was, to be honest with you, though, probably was uh, Travis Brown and Andre Arlovsky. I mean, those guys really went at it, and Arlovsky was just destroying Brown. Then Brown threw a hook and knocked him down, and then Arlovsky got up and finished the fight. So that was a pretty good one. But we'll see what happens.
All right, Mike. You know what? Let's get into some news, Mike, and let's touch on some news. I know there's a lot in the way of news this week.
News Corner.
Why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, let's go ahead and kind of start with something that they talked about during the broadcast on the Fox broadcast, and that is Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Claudia Gadelha. They are going to be the coaches for Tough 23. And guys, this
Awesome.
is the American Tough. This isn't like Tough Brazil or Tough Latin America or anything like that. It's the Tough that's broadcasted on Fox Sports 1.
It's the good one.
Yeah, exactly. And, they're going to be coaching strawweights and light heavyweights, and they will be fighting at the finale, which is the day before, UFC 200. So we get to see that fight for free. It's a belt. And something that I find actually really interesting is that, they are going to be coaching light heavyweights. This is going to be the first time that you see women coaching men. And I did kind of a story on it on Facebook, which is, you might think to yourself, just really quickly, you might really think to yourself, how are these like 115 women going to coach a guy who is walking around over 200? That's kind of the first thing I thought of. But then you got to remember, these coaches, they always bring in their own assistant coaches and their teammates and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting, man.
It's about the fundamentals and stuff too. It's
exactly.
They can definitely coach it. I mean, if you look at some of the coaches that are actually coaching some of the top guys in MMA, they're small guys. They're not big heavyweights or anything, and look at Jackson.
Yeah, I was going to bring him up.
He doesn't look like a guy that'll just whoop on you. He's smart. He knows how to train these guys. And let me just say that Jędrzejczyk and Gadelha, I respect these two so much. I like them both a lot, but I'm in love with Jędrzejczyk. Joanna is awesome. Everything about her is she's an awesome champion, and I hope she keeps that belt. But you know what? Gadelha is one tough chick. I think this fight is going to be awesome. It's going to be just as good as the first one, hopefully even better. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think Gadelha won the first fight. It was close, but I think she won it. And actually, to backtrack a second too, is that the ladies, usually the ladies don't do a lot of knockouts, so they've trained on how to finish fights without knocking somebody out. And I think that's going to be really good for a lot of the big guys there that they're coaching, which is a lot of these fighters sometimes will stand in front of a guy and they're putting all their power and kicks into another guy, and they're just not going down. And what do you do when it's not working, when it's always worked? Well, these ladies are going to be able to tell them, how to, not that the other coaches haven't told them, but you can now see that this young woman who's 100 pounds less than you are, how to get around those things.
Yeah,
and I think that's pretty cool.
I'm excited to watch this tough. Honestly, these two ladies are great. Mike, we've also got some other news. Magny versus Lombard, huh?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that fight. I'm not sure if Neil Magny is getting his due yet, Jay. I know you and I and a lot of hardcore guys out there, we know Neil Magny. We respect Neil Magny. I think
this is kind of a bad fight for him.
Well, I was going to say, I think he kind of the train was stopped a little bit against Damian Maia. Damian Maia was just too good of a fighter. But this Lombard fight, he's fighting a former Bellator champ. I think he can get it done against this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if he will. I'm not going to pick it right now, but I think it's a winnable fight.
Yeah, but the thing about the thing that upsets me is that, he was stopped by Damian Maia, okay? But then he won 2 fights right after that against guys that are pretty good. I mean, Eric Silva and Kelvin Gastelum. Yep. And these were great fights. And now he's fighting Hector Lombard, like a guy who's been popped for roids before, a guy who does have knockout power. So, but it's a guy that I think is beneath his talent, Magny's talent. I think Magny's better than him all the way around, but you're fighting as a scary dude that has the potential of knocking you out with one shot. So it's one of those things where luck could play a part in here, and Lombard can knock him out, and then he's got to go back to the bottom again. It sucks for Magny. This is a terrible fight for him.
Yeah, he's 9-1 in his last 10 fights. Magny is, and this is going to be Lombard's first fight since he got popped for roids. So he's going to have to make. He wants to make a statement here, and I think if Magny does win this fight against Hector Lombard, I think a lot of the fans, the hardcores who know Lombard from Bellator, watching him on Spike. I think more people will get in Magny's camp now as a guy who's not just an up and comer, but a guy who's just a real big stalwart in the division. And I'm looking forward to the fight. I think it's going to be a really good one.
Yeah. And of course, his last fight was against, excuse me, Josh Berkman, and that was a no contest overturned because of the roids. So.
And that fight's still kind of fresh in my mind, and I'm not going to take too long to talk about it, but Josh Berkman kind of won the first round, and he hung around. He wasn't finished. So, if Josh Berkman, a guy who's near the end of his career, and doesn't have the length that Magny has, and I don't know how good his movement is compared to Magny's, but Magny's got a lot of good length, and he's, in the prime of his career. I think it's something that Magny, this is kind of his fight to lose, but man, the power from the former Bellator champ from Lombard is just scary.
Exactly, and that's all I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I think it's a tough fight either way for Magny. I think Magny's the better fighter, yet he's facing a guy that could possibly take everything away from him with one swing, and that's what scares me. What else do we got, Mike?
Well, we've got a few more fights that have been, well, actually more than a few more fights that have been announced, but why don't we just take a break from the fights right now that have been announced and talk about BJ Penn.
Yes.
BJ Penn, Jay, I know he's a big favorite of yours. I've come to respect BJ Penn after watching his career and seeing him as of late. And he's coming out of retirement. Once that Nick Lentz fight, because Nick Lentz was talking smack about him, but that's at 145.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see BJ at 145. If he's going to fight, I want to see him at 155. Your thoughts, my man? This is one of your favorite guys.
Here's the deal with it. I don't want to see him back, but he's back. Okay. Mm-hmm. And because he's back, and because I respected his whole career and respect this guy so much, I have to be in his corner. I'm going to back him up. It's his decision. It's his life. But I will be there to support BJ Penn and root him on, because I respect this guy so much. So I can't go against him. And against Nick Lentz, I want to see him tear the head off Nick Lentz after all that situation with that letter he wrote him. Although I will say, Nick Lentz, you have a way with words, and a few things you wrote in there were hilarious. Hilarious.
I felt it was uncalled for. But
no.
Still pretty freaking funny.
Parts of it was uncalled for. Nick, I don't think you should be taking up a fight for somebody else. Let them work out their own battles, because it doesn't make you nor them look good. So that's the part I would cut out of there. But everything you were addressing to BJ from your standpoint towards him, that was great.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
What I'm looking forward to is seeing how BJ looks now in Jackson Winklejohn. This is going to be the first time that BJ actually goes to another camp. Now, he's had, I didn't know this. I found this out from BJ's mom, by the way. That sounds funny, but I go to a lot of the UFC fan conventions, and BJ's mom works the BJ Penn booth for shirts and stuff. And being a big Matt Hughes fan, Jay, you're a part of this story.
Yep.
I was buying you a BJ Penn shirt.
Yep.
And I said, do you mind if I buy if a Matt Hughes fan buys a BJ Penn shirt? And she goes, "Oh, of course not. They're actually friends. You don't know that?" And I was like, "What?" Because the rivalry was so big and everything. And yes, so sure enough, there you go. If you guys can't see it, but Jay still has it. Just showed it to me.
Just scrap.
Yeah, and so I bought the shirt. And anyway, long story short, she said that Hughes would go out and to his camps and for wrestling, help him with wrestling, which there's not many better than Matt Hughes at wrestling. But this will be the first time he leaves Hawaii. BJ does to go to another camp and immerse himself in another camp, and not just another camp, but Jackson Winklejohn. I wish this would have happened 5 years ago, even 2 years ago.
Yes.
But now that it's happening now. What an interesting wrinkle to this whole thing, Jay.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. And I'm going to go against what you said. I think 145 would be fine, would be perfect for him. Only because I don't see him gaining a lot of muscle or anything. And some of these guys at 155 are just shredded and strong. I think he'd have a better shot at being strong enough to fight in the 145 division at his age. It just depends on how fast he is. You know, I want to see if he can actually keep up with these guys, because we know the 145ers are fast. And
you brought up age, though, but see, he's always had a hard time making 155, which is why he would fight at 170. And for him to having a hard time making 155, making 145 now at 37, it looks tough, man. I hear what you're saying, but here's the thing. He should do it.
But here's the thing. He's been out of the game so long. I'm wondering if he's let some muscle mass go, and that, you know, could attribute to some of the weight loss that he might have gained already. And so maybe he's walking around at, you know, 160. Who knows? I have to see what he looks like. Honestly, I have to see what he looks like. We'll see, you know, when he fights that first fight on weigh-in day, we'll see what he looks like. And I'm sure we'll have a pretty good idea whether or not he's going to do well.
I think he wants 145 because he wants to be the first person to get, you know, 3 belts, which no one's ever done before. I think although he hasn't said anything, I think he doesn't like Conor McGregor and thinks he can win that fight. Because let's be honest. I don't want to make this all about Conor McGregor every time we have a show, but BJJ from BJ could really put away Conor McGregor if it was to come to that. Not saying it would, saying it could, because McGregor is not great off of his back, and that's all
but at the same time, I don't see it going to the ground.
I'm pretty sure McGregor's going to knock him out, but if it happens.
Mike, BJ Penn coming back, that's, you know, the jury's still out. We have to see what he looks like.
And he wants 197, UFC 197, but there's still no opponent for him yet.
When is that? What month is that?
That's in March. That's the Conor McGregor Rafael dos Anjos card.
No, that's too soon. That is way too soon.
Well, his whole thing is a 6-week training camp, and he's already starting to train. So, I would get acclimated a little bit longer. I agree with you, but that's what he wants to do. So.
I agree with Nick Lentz with what he said about that. I think that just builds on excuses. If he were to lose, he could say, "Oh, I only had 6 weeks." You know.
Yeah. I also think this. I certainly see what you're saying there, but I also think that this is maybe the last answer to the question of, do I still have it? Because if he goes to Jackson Winklejohn and can't get a win against, say they give him, we're talking 1-5. Hey, who's our favorite whipping boy? Ricardo Lamas. Okay, He can't beat Ricardo Lamas. Then I think he knows he has to hang it up. He has no more questions about anything.
I agree, and we call him the whipping boy. Why, Mike?
He beats people that that aren't great, but when he gets his butt whipped, when he's fighting some good people,
and he's still highly ranked.
Yeah, he's like ranked number 5 or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. On to other news, Mike. I see that Vitor Belfort has a fight now against Jacare Souza, and awesome fight night 87.
I'm excited about that fight. I think Jacare Souza won his last fight, Jam. I think he's thought that as well.
Yeah, I did too. Even though Royd Boy beat him.
Yeah. And both these guys are coming off losses. Vitor's really bad loss to Chris Weidman, and of course Jacare lost to Yoel Romero. So it's the two losers or two winners fighting each other, basically what the UFC likes to do with their matchmaking. And this is going to be a great fight. This is they're both well-rounded. This is striker versus grappler. I can't wait to see this fight.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. I'm just excited to see Jacare get this fight. After what happened with Soldier of Roids, Romero. After what happened to him and everything with the roid being popped and everything. I felt bad for him because I did think he won that fight. So fighting Belfort was the next. It's a smart move. It's the smart fight here. I think this is a good move for the UFC.
And now that Romero, nothing has come out since that they said he might have a problem with the test, but I think the UFC knows that there's a problem there, and that's why they're making this fight. And the rumors flying around now is that since Romero can't fight, and they're giving Jacare to Belfort, and they're going to rematch Weidman and Rockhold.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not, but we'll see.
So that's not set in stone, Weidman versus Rockhold.
No. It's just
Okay.
but Chris Weidman said that he's training in case that happens.
I
He's
know.
training like it's going to happen.
And honestly, I don't think he deserves that rematch. He got beat. He got beat soundly. Like we've covered that before, but I don't think he deserves that rematch.
Oh, you got on me when I said he didn't deserve the rematch.
I flip-flopped on it.
Okay, all right.
I went back and thought about it, and you were right. You are correct, sir. He got beat soundly, and he doesn't deserve that rematch.
Just for me, if you win like 3 or 4 in a row, then I can certainly understand it. But he didn't, hold the belt too long. But I love Chris Weidman, so believe me, I'd like to see him fight again. But I think Jacare takes his fight, Jay. Do you think as well, or?
Yeah, I think Jacare will take it. And here's the thing, I think Jacare has a great shot against Rockhold or Weidman. He has a great shot. I'm not saying he'd win, but he has a great shot. He's so much more well-rounded than the other two guys. Like he could fight you on the ground and be scary.
Right. He lost to Rockhold in Strikeforce.
Yes, he did.
But the thing is that both these guys have gotten so much better that it's tough to go back and was it 5 years ago or however long ago it was?
Yep.
I mean, it's really tough to judge by that. But the middleweight division is looking good, man. I'm excited.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. See, that's the thing. When I poo-poo the heavyweight division, I have so many other divisions to look forward to in the UFC. Right. It's great. Everything from the 115 women's division on up. It's great. It's fantastic fights. I'm loving it. UFC right now, mixed martial arts, it's the time to get into it right now. And the UFC is the best, the cream of the crop.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting too is something we haven't spoken about on the podcast, but something we talked about a while ago, just talk about fights, is that there was 2 divisions that I thought that Strikeforce had that was better than the UFC at the time, and that was one of them was the middleweight division. Of course, Anderson held court. It would probably defeat all those guys in the Strikeforce middleweight division. But guys like Jacare, guys like Luke Rockhold, Tim Kennedy, guys that are looking very well here in the UFC currently, just a testament to Strikeforce. So
yeah, definitely, Mike. And I see we have another fight on the news here. It's Tony Ferguson versus Michael Johnson too.
Yeah, that is one of the last things I wrote about in the Facebook site. It's an interesting fight because, since they fought and it was a unanimous decision in favor of Johnson, Tony Ferguson has gone on to win like 7 straight, I think, and Johnson is 5-4 since then. Ferguson, he's knocking on the door of a title shot, and Johnson's kind of trying to find his way. I think this is another one of those things where the UFC is trying to keep guys active because they don't know what's going on with who's going to fight who. And again, this is lightweight. We talked about RDA and Alvarez and all these guys. Now we have El Kukui in the mix.
Mm-hmm. It's a strange matchup when I look at this. Because personally, with how they've looked recently, I'm saying Ferguson runs through Michael Johnson. He finishes him.
I agree. I'm not sure what round, but I am on board with that pick.
And I know it's not part of our picks here, but I just have to put that out there. Even as early as it is, I will say that. UFC 197, Tony Ferguson is going to beat Michael Johnson soundly.
And I'm hoping it's on the main card.
Me too.
Because that could be a fight pass prelim or a FS prelim. Hopefully, though, it's on the main card. It deserves to be.
That could be a KO or sub of the night right there.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, let's move on to some news with the WSOF. We have Marlon Moraes against Joseph Barajas. What do you know about Barajas?
Yeah, Barajas, he's pretty good. He's 12-1. He's got 4 TKOs, 3 subs on his record. Not
bad.
He's a fine fighter, but Marlon Moraes is one of my favorite fighters in the WSOF. One of my favorite fighters currently, anyway, whether it's the UFC or anything.
Fighter.
Moraes. I think he just needs to come over to the UFC already. I know he just signed a another contract for over there.
I know.
It's going to be exciting. Both these guys are capable finishers, and both are well-rounded.
Yep. And I feel the same way about Marias and also about Justin Gagey. I think that both those guys need to come to the UFC. But speaking of Justin Gagey,
yeah,
what's going on with him?
Justin Gagey, he's finally going to defend. Well, I shouldn't say finally, but they had the tournament a couple months ago, the lightweight tournament. Brian Foster won that tournament. He's 25-8, 12 subs, 12 TKOs. Solid fighter. He's a UFC vet and some other places he's fought. But Justin Gagey, he's 15-0. The guy, has almost all knockouts on his resume. This is going to be a great fight. They fought before. Gagey won that fight. But Brian Foster he's not a different fighter, but he's a better fighter at what he's already been doing, which is he's strong. He's a good wrestler. And this fight, just like the Moraes fight and the Moraes versus Barajas, that's a good fight. But this Gagey Foster fight, I mean, I've seen more of Foster, so I'm looking forward to that fight as well.
Yeah, me too. It's always a pleasure to watch Gagey fight. Mike.
Yes, Jay, what's going on? What do you got?
I'm gonna do an impression for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey Dana, can I fight again? I love Fight Pass. Okay, that was terrible.
I do believe you're talking about Tank Abbott. No, I believe that's Super Sage Northcutt.
Yeah. So what's going on with Northcutt? What's going on with him?
Well, that's basically going to lead in maybe to some of our picks later on with the upcoming UFC on Fox 18. But Northcutt has a new opponent. He's fighting a guy. Last name's Barberena. He's just stepped in on a week's notice. He's 10-3, 8 KOs, 1 sub. So this guy is no joke. His name's Brian Barberena. At 170, nothing's been said on why they moved it to 170. My only guess is that it's because the guy can't make weight at 155 in time. And Holbrook, who was the guy who's originally supposed to fight Sage Northcutt, they didn't say why he was pulled. They just said that he was out. So it's gonna be interesting. That fight is kicking off the main card for UFC on Fox 18. So we're gonna see how Super Sage Northcutt deals with a short notice opponent and go from there.
Oh, by the way, I little bit of news about Northcutt. I was reading about a week or so ago that Sage Northcutt has been drug tested 6 times in the last 3 months.
Is it 6 times? I saw a picture of him being tested.
Yes. And you know what? That's great. That's fantastic. I love these random drug tests that they're doing. They need to get this sport cleaned up, and they're trying. They're trying hard. That's obvious to me. You look at a guy like Sage Northcutt, and you think, oh, this guy's got to be on something, right? I mean, that's your first thoughts. Nobody's born like that. Well, apparently Sage Northcutt has just got the genetics because he's been tested 6 times in the last 3 months, has passed every test so far. So kudos to him, and I can't wait to see him fight again. He's exciting.
Yeah, he's been doing push-ups since he was like 4 years old, and sit-ups and karate and all stuff like that. So it's one of those things I think too that goes along with it. Hey, all those tests. I think people that are giving him a lot of crap about his physique and why, there's your proof.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. And you know what? If he's beating the test, so to speak, eventually, I don't care who you are, you will be caught. With all this random drug testing, you will be caught eventually.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead. Well, let's just go. Well, we're going to go to that really soon.
You know what?
I guess
let's go ahead and get to the picks. Let's do some picks. Okay.
Real quick, though, for all you hardcores out there, Diego Sanchez fighting Jim Miller at UFC 197. That's the featured fight past prelim. So all you guys want to see these old guys go at it. Well, not old guys, but they're a little past their prime. They're fighting each other, which should be a great fight. But yeah.
We pick 'em.
UFC on Fox 18. I'm excited about this fight. Man, Anthony Johnson, Ryan Bader, Josh Barnett, Ben Rothwell, Sage Northcutt, Brian Barberena. Jay, you want to get us started on the main event with Johnson and Bader, or you want me to go first?
Let me go first, I guess. Anthony Johnson, 20-5, but just looking at that record, you would think he's good, but he's got some losses there. He's a lot better than that. shows. I mean, the way he's been fighting lately, I know he's had a loss against what's his name, the champ. Who's the champ right now?
Daniel Cormier.
Daniel Cormier, but it's Daniel Cormier. He's a tough dude.
He ate a right hand. And
kept
coming.
And he kept coming forward. Yeah, and he just ate it. Anthony Johnson is one of the hardest hitters in this division or in the whole sport. A lot of people say that he can fight at heavyweight and just, crush people with his right hand. But he's fighting Ryan Bader, who's also 20-4 and also a good fighter. But I don't think he's going to match up well with Anthony Johnson. I think Anthony Johnson is going to knock out Ryan Bader.
Yeah, he actually did fight at heavyweight against Andrei Arlovsky back in the WSOF. So that tells you something about Anthony Johnson. And he put Arlovsky down pretty hard. When I look at this fight, I see Johnson winning by KO, but the matchup favors it favors Darth Bader a little bit in so much as if he can survive early and get him to the ground and use that wrestling, he's got a good chance to get a coast, in a decision. But if it's going to be on the feet, I mean, Johnson is going to hurt him and hurt him bad.
Yeah.
And so it all depends on how these guys want to go and fight.
When have you seen Ryan Bader really use his wrestling effectively lately?
Well, he did it well against Rashad. Now, Rashad is an aging guy, though. So, it's tough to maybe to talk about that decision. But, I'm picking Johnson, but I won't be surprised if Bader gets this win. And I hate this. It sounds like I'm hedging, and maybe it is. But if I had to put my money, and my kids on the line, I don't have kids, but if I had kids on the line, then I would pick Johnson. I'd probably pick Johnson big because I think that, look, Johnson has some wrestling ability as well. Sure, it's junior college wrestling compared to Ryan Bader's, All-American wrestling, but that may just be all he needs, Jay, to keep it on his feet and get the KO.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, but it's one of those things that, I look at Ryan Bader's record and you see, he's got to win over Rashad, Phil Davis, Owen St. Preux, Cavalcante, and some guy named Peroche. I don't remember him.
Oh, Anthony Peroche?
Okay.
He's a goofy looking dude. I can tell you that.
All right. Without getting into people's looks too much, all I have to say is if you look at those fights, you have split, decision, split, decision. I mean,
yeah, it's all decisions.
Sure. Ryan Bader is not an exciting fighter, and I don't think he would match up well with Anthony Johnson because when I look at those fighters, I don't see guys that hit nearly as hard as Anthony Johnson. Anthony Johnson, he's fought Nogueira, Phil Davis, Manoa, Cormier, Gustafsson, Arlovsky. And
crushed them all.
He's crushed them all. Exactly. And he's only got, between all those names I just told you, he's got one decision in there. The rest of them are TKOs or submissions.
Yeah. But I have to throw your stat back at you, which is a decision on for Ryan Bader. That's how he gets it done. He lays on you. He moves you around. He controls you, and that's all I'm worried about. I'm still picking Johnson. I'm just saying if it goes into round 2 and he gets another takedown, it could be Bader's fight. And I think Bader deserves to fight for the title already. However, I do believe John Jones is going to beat Daniel Cormier if they have that fight coming out, and I want to see Anthony Johnson get the fight he's owed, which is against a title fight against Bones, and that's going to be a great fight.
Yeah, that'll be a fantastic fight. Look, Ryan Bader, you're 100% correct. He has a chance to take him down and kind of grind out this whole fight and get a decision win, but I think these small short hooks from Anthony Johnson and these short punches will hurt Bader. I've seen Bader get knocked out a few times, and some of those punches didn't look like the hardest punches. And I don't think he's fought a guy that could hit as hard as Anthony Johnson. Yeah,
I hear what you're saying. You look at Machida victory. Even Tito Ortiz had a short hook on him.
Yes, he did.
That plastered him. But it's all going to depend on who can get the game plan. And I'm solidly, I'm picking Johnson, but Bader he just has been getting it done lately.
Yeah. And since we've already talked about him, let's talk a little bit about Northcutt versus Barberena. Who do you see winning this fight and why?
Well, from what I can see on Barberena is that he's pretty much a big knockout artist, and that's what he kind of like. That's his level. That's what he does. And I think that Sage is just so well rounded, and he's a smart guy that he's probably going to take him down and finish the fight there. Simply because if you look at Sage's last couple of fights, well, the first fight was, obviously was just done like that. But when you look at his second fight, as soon as he would get the takedown, it was all she wrote.
Yeah.
I mean, the first takedown in his second fight came near the end of the round, so they had to stop at the end of the round. But then in the second round, he got the takedown and finished it. And I think that's how it's going to go. That's really how I think it's going to go.
Yeah, I definitely see this being a finish from either one of them. I'm going with Northcutt. Yeah, I just think that Northcutt's going to win this one, Mike. Probably as soon as the second round. No later than.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty good. I think if it ends like early within the first few minutes, I think that Barberena is going to have maybe landed a good shot on him or something. But I'll certainly go with the second round. This guy's still learning. Northcutt it's a short notice fight, so I'm going second round as well.
And it could be the first round. I mean, that's how much confidence I have in Northcutt right now. I think Northcutt is a great up and comer right now, and he's one to watch. So if you guys don't find any of these fights, aside from the Anthony Johnson-Bader fight, interesting, I would watch this fight for sure. Because honestly, this card is not the greatest card, for me anyway. I know you like this matchup between Ben Rothwell and Josh Barnett. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, we look at so many of these guys at heavyweight that had some kind of little win streaks going, whether it's 3 or 4 wins in a row. You've got, what is it going to be? Rothwell, is he going to get, the chance at it? Was it going to be Overeem? Was he going to get a chance at it? Arlovsky? These guys, they had some wins in a row. And basically you have, not Overeem, but you have Rothwell, who's got 3 in a row. Wins over Brandon Vera, Alistair Overeem, and Matt Mitrione. Overeem's kind of come back into style now, obviously, with his knockout of JDS. But, he's got 3 in a row, and he's not super athletic, but he's doing his thing. Mm-hmm. But he's fighting Josh Barnett, former UFC champ, former Pride great, one of the best all-around fighters in the division. He's not obviously not up there with Kane and Verdum, but I'd say he's one of the next level down. I think that Josh Barnett is going to manhandle Rothwell because he's just so savvy. And he's just got so much better in his well-rounded skills.
Yeah, I agree 100% in this. Just you naming those names alone that Rothwell's fought, like Brandon Vera and Paul Chang, and guys that aren't very good anyway.
Right.
It's not impressive to me.
Yeah.
And then you got you on the opposite side. You have Josh Barnett, who's fought Travis Brown, Roy Nelson, Frank Mir, Daniel Cormier. Yes, he's lost to Brown, Cormier, but I mean, I think this guy, he's one strong dude. We've seen him, manhandle people before, both here and Strikeforce, and I think he beats him soundly. I think that it's going to be over pretty quickly. Again, probably second round.
And I want to touch on the Travis Brown loss. I would still pick Josh Barnett in a rematch. That was the fight that Travis Brown was pushed up against the fence
with the elbows.
Yeah, exactly. And started unleashing the elbows that Barnett didn't know was coming. And now guys are doing that. And so Travis Brown, that's a great win. That's 100% your win. But I think that's something that if Barnett would have thought about it, then I think he would have still got that win. So I still think he's one of the cream of the crop.
You're saying back then that fighters weren't really aware of that,
that position with the elbows.
Yeah.
And straight to the temple, and it was something that a lot of guys weren't doing, and now guys are starting to do it now.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But I'm picking Josh Barnett too. So I'd say about second round. I think this is going to be a finish. Hopefully, I really hope this is a finish because we have been seeing some stale fights with the heavyweight division. I know the last one was finished against Mitrione, Travis Brown Mitrione, but it just wasn't a great fight for me.
Well, yeah, I'll go and just finish up kind of like my thoughts on the division then, because there's
Okay,
I think
go
there's
ahead.
a little to talk about, not a bunch. But like I said, there's a lot of guys up there that that need to fight for the title, that have great wins. You've got Miocic, who's pretty much been promised the fight.
I respect that guy.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like
No,
him.
he's like I said, he's one of the best guys. That's he's no longer an up and comer. We need more guys like Miocic because
Yes, we
he's
do.
an athletic guy, great boxing, tough as nails guy. But with Barnett, if he gets this win, he's got 2 in a row. He's got 4 in his last 5. You can't have Cain Velasquez fighting for Fabricio Verdum all the time. Bigfoot's not doing anything, so Cain's not going to fight him, obviously. Because what I'm trying to say is that Cain gets rematches all the time. They want him to have the belt, but I digress. So, there's some good guys out there, but we'll see what happens. I say in the next couple of months, because now we'll know it's Overeem, it's Miocic, and now is it going to be Barnett or is it going to be Rothwell? Because that's the only question we have now of who those next best guys are.
Yeah, I agree.
We still have that's this Saturday, UFC on Fox 18, so on Big Fox. But Friday, the day before that, we do have Bellator 148,
That's
and
right.
that's pretty much the last one I think we'll be covering for the
That's
night.
right. So Bellator 148. That of course being Paul Daly versus Andy Urich or Urich.
I think it's Ulrich. I think it's how you say it with the CH.
Urich. Okay, Urich. Yeah. All right. So he's 11-5, fighting Paul Daly, who's 37-13. Some say that Paul Daly is well past his prime. I mean, the miles on that boy. That's a lot of fights.
Yeah, it is, and and he's a kickboxer as well. So you've got to think about how much, punishment he's taken. Little background real quick. This is supposed to be Josh Koscheck's first fight in Bellator. He was going to fight Andy Ulrich, but then he pulled out due to injury, so they moved Paul Daly up to fight him. I'm going to go with Daly here. I don't see anything for Andy Ulrich that screams wrestler or BJJ. He does have 2 submissions, but basically it's decisions and KOs is what he has the most of in all his wins. So I think if Daly keeps it standing, he's going to knock him out. The only other really big fight I'm really interested in here, and don't get me wrong, this card's solid, especially for a Bellator card. It's a solid card, but Ryan Couture versus Patricky Ferrer, Patricky Pitbull. This is basically another, grappler versus striker, and we're really going to see now Patricky's done. He lost his last fight. Ryan Couture, he looks good, then he loses, looks good, loses. Randy Couture's son, certainly a different fighter than his dad. His dad was dirty boxing and wrestling, and Ryan is a great submissions guy. So I'm interested in that fight.
Yeah. I still say that Pitbull takes this one. Nothing really impresses me about Ryan Couture. I've never been impressed by any of his wins. I just think he's okay. Like he's an average fighter.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. Nothing's really impressed me either. And I think some of it has to do with his nonchalant look in the cage and the fact that he doesn't roll out punches,
Oh yeah, it's like when you look at an actor's performance that some people will say, "Oh well, they phoned in that performance." That's kind of like how I look at Ryan Couture. He sort of phones in his performance. It's like the look he has while he's fighting. It's almost like he's sparring, like he's there to spar that day. It's almost as if he doesn't take it seriously. I don't know what it is.
It seems like his demeanor, in my opinion. Of course, I don't know either. But the guy has fought in Strikeforce. He's fighting now in Bellator. If he wanted to fight in the UFC, I just don't know if they'd let him because Dana White really hates Randy Couture, and I wouldn't put it past. As much as I like Dana White in a lot of aspects, I wouldn't put it past him to not let Ryan in the door if he wanted to go. But then again, Ryan may not want to go based because of his dad or for whatever reason. But he's a solid name. He's a solid guy. He's where he's going to be probably for the rest of his career, Mike.
I was excited when I heard his son was going to start fighting Randy Couture's son. And then I watched his first few fights and I thought, man, this kid is very average and he just doesn't look like he has any great potential. And that's where he's at. And Patricky, he's been around. Yes, he's been losing and he hasn't looked as good as he has in the past. Maybe past his prime. I don't know. But I still see him beating Ryan Couture. I think it's a decision win, though.
Did I actually make a pick on this fight, Jay? I don't
No,
know.
you didn't make a pick yet.
I didn't. Okay, good. Because I was like, wait, did I make? I talked about it, but
You didn't make a pick.
I still don't know. Let me just for my final thing on Ryan Couture to kind of add to our discussion on that. Then I'll make a pick, I guess. Is that look? Not everybody has a stellar physique, but the guy doesn't seem to want to work on that, and he's a fighter. He just walks in like some guy off the street and puts on gloves and shorts, and maybe that's because he's a grappler and that's what he cares about the most. I don't know, but maybe because of that, that's why I'll pick Patricky. I'll go along with you and just say that hey, Patricky's he's got to be decent enough, really well-rounded to be where he's at now. I think that well-roundedness is gonna keep him on his feet to get the knockout punch. I'll go third round knockout.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going decision, and there's something I learned here tonight, Mike. You apparently like your men with a lot of muscles.
Well, it just goes along with we're talking about like.
No, I know what you're saying.
Care,
I'm just
it's
teasing.
like
Yeah. I know. I totally get what you were saying. But there's a lot of guys out there that fight without that great physique and do well. I mean, BJ Penn was one of those guys back in the day. I never thought his physique was a fighter's physique, and he did very well.
So for me, I hear you, but for me, that guy BJ Penn at least looked like he pushed up some barbells or something for a little bit. Ryan Couture just walks in like flabby and
Yeah. But anyway, folks, it looks like we're at the end of our show here. Like we always say, if you want to, you can email us at mmathinktank@gmail.com. Always visit the Facebook page, which is growing, by the way, and I was pleasantly surprised by that this morning, seeing several new members liking the page on Facebook. And, of course, you could find that at MMA Think Tank Podcast on Facebook. Also, if you Google us, you will find a YouTube page by the same name, and we're out there, folks, so look for us. Anything you want to add, Mike?
Yeah, our next podcast will be 2 weeks from now. It'll be after the Fabricio Verdum, Cain Velasquez UFC 196. Another good fight on that card is Johnny Hendricks versus Wonderboy Thompson. So within the 2 weeks, we'll certainly be talking about the winners of UFC on Fox 18 and UFC 196. So we'll be back in the saddle 2 weeks from now.
Yes, we will definitely be back in 2 weeks. I shouldn't be sick. Hopefully, anyway. It's been a great podcast tonight, Mike. It's been a pleasure as always.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I appreciate all the listeners out there. And like I said, the Facebook's growing. People are listening online, and it's a great thing. People are going to the YouTube page and blowing that up, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I echo Jay and all this stuff. It's amazing to see what's happening here. We love the sport. We love writing about the sport. We love talking about the sport. We love just watching the sport, just like you guys do. So thank you as well. And take a look at the Facebook page. I'm doing the best I can there. Hopefully you like it. And Jay and I will continue to put things up on Twitter, keep you guys knowing what's going on.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.